Shalom everybody, and I'm glad you decided to join us in this holy and very special night as we're getting ready to enter into the actual night of the bride. I wanted to take some time with you this evening, this holy time. We're standing, if you're in the United States, right around midnight, and other places, maybe you're waking up, to truly observe this Shavuot. And I want to talk about this in the context of the festival and the Feast of Israel in a very special message that I've prepared called Yom HaAchdut, the Day of Unification. You see, when we look at the feasts of Adonai, the feast of the Lord, if it is Pesach, if it is Shavuot, if we're talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, at the end of the day, all of those feasts come to do one thing, to bring us up to an appointment with God. But also to gather us is together as a group of people. So we are seeing that in the Pesach, when we all gather around the table, or when we remember in Shavuot, the story of the giving of the Torah, what we are observing today, or ultimately in Sukkot, which called the Feast of Engathering. The theme, the common theme for all of those feasts, to all of those festivals, appointed time, is truly the ingathering. And I want to talk about the final and ultimate ingathering that is going to be taking place in Yerushalayim. This is why you are here this evening. The garment that is made is not a garment that belongs to one person. You perhaps seen those pictures before, when the last page of a Torah that is written, where they gather the entire community and each person come and he paint and fill the last letter. Why? Because the Torah, the covenant, this relationship, this ingathering belong to all of us. And in a matter of fact, until all parties are taking place, until all the parties are coming together, the ingathering cannot be full. Now today, and going into tomorrow, you notice that we have brought together 50 different teachers. This Hebrew word, chamishim, or 50, is enrooted in the word chamushim, as we see in Exodus chapter 13, verse 18, when it said they went up from Egypt armed. What's the word armed? Is the same word rooted in the word 50. Today we believe that the arming for the ingathering, this ingathering cannot take place unless everybody is present. And this is important to understand. Now there is something very different about this theme, this year, the gown of many colors, unlike any other event that we are doing. And I want you to understand that each and every person who is teaching today represent a stripe in this garment. There is not a single person who is teaching who is not equally critical for the stripe of many colors. And we talk about the gown of many colors that Yosef has worn. It's called in Hebrew kutonet pasim. Do you hear the word there? Pasim, pas is a stripe of many colors. It's important to note that the groom himself also wear a gown of many colors. And part of the unification that is happening between the groom and the bride is the unification of their gowns themselves. So who is Yeshua? Is Yeshua white? Is he black? Is he orange? He's all of the above. Because the gown that Yeshua himself wears is a gown of many colors. Therefore the bride have to match in DNA the groom and also wear the gown of many colors. Now those two gowns represent also two different set of people. And although we are talking about the gown in the context of us marrying the groom, there is first a reconciliation that have to be taking place within the gown itself, within the bride itself. And in Revelation chapter 7, as a whole, this chapter, we read about the event that described in the gospel as the fullness of time. If you want to understand the fullness of time and the moment that we are about to enter into today, you have to understand what I'm about to tell you and why. It was so critical to bring people to teach today and tomorrow from every nation, every tribe, and every tongue. Now, I decided to do something special with you this holy evening. You see next to me the prophet Isaiah, one of the rarest scrolls that you can find, the scroll of Isaiah. The mirror picture of Revelation chapter 7 is found in the scroll of Isaiah. And in a moment, we will read and understand straight from the scroll, what is this day of unification look like? I speak about this a lot in my book, The Good News According to the COVID-19. And tonight, before we hear the word of the Torah, I want to explain it just a little bit deeper so we all understand this. It's important not to start in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, but rather start in Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. And here in Revelation chapter 7, 1, we read about this time that is really coming straight immediately during the time of Jacob trouble. It's taking place. And look what is happening as Jacob trouble is taking place. And there is a counting that taking place of all the children of Israel who are present. Now, we're seeing here the number 144,000. People are asking me all the time, who are those 144,000? Do you want to tell me that there are only 144,000 Jews alive in this time? No, not at all. But we have to understand who are those 144,000. Those 144,000 represent the Truma. They represent the offering. They represent the first fruit. And as Paul says in Romans 11:16, if the Truma is holy, so will be the entire house is going to be holy. The 144 represent a finite number, a Truma, 2%. So if you want to know how many Jewish people are standing in this day, you actually have to take this number of 2%, 144,000, and multiply them by 50. And you get the number 7.2 million. There are 144,000 who are like emissary, represent the Jewish people. And those are representing 7.2 million Jews. And they are themselves are going through a process of ingathering. It is important to understand that there are three actually different ingatherings that is taking place. And now you will understand why this day that we're reading about called the day of unification. Because it says here in the text, it says in Revelation 7:4, and I heard the number of the people who are sealed. And what was their number? It says 144 people from the tribe of the house of Israel. Which is important. It is said from the Jews, it said from the house of Israel, which seems to suggest that the ingathering of the scatters of the house of Israel already have taken place. Those are not necessarily only physical Jews, but they are the house of Israel. So they are including the Lemba and the Hebrew and the Anusim and the Sfaradim. They are part of those people, of the 7.2 million. Well, we have 18 million Jews in the world. Where is the rest of the Jews? Remember that there is something that taking place prior to that. It's called the time of Jacob trouble. And in a moment you see that Gog and Magog already took place. Everything you're reading here, this great ingathering, taking place after Gog and Magog, not before Gog and Magog. Now, how are those people are recognized? They are recognized because they have something on their forehead. They have a sign of a servant of their forehead. The Hebrew word for a sign is the word tav. And believe it or not, the book of Revelation is true. How do we know that it's true? Because even the rabbi of Israel, in the book called Otiyot, the Rabbi Akiva, one of the ancient Jewish kind of mystical books, talk about the fact that in those days when Mashiach comes, there is a letter on the forehead of each and every one in the house of Israel, just like it says in the book of Revelation. And what is the letter upon our forehead? It's the letter Taf. The letter Taf, it's explained in this book, is representing two things. It represents the word Emet, mean truth, and it's representing the word Torah. Who are those 44,000 who represent are representatives of the entire house of Israel? Those are Jews who are committed themselves to a true life of Torah, a true Messianic Jews who are expecting and awaiting the Lamb, who have upon our forehead the letter Torah. Friends, we do not have today 144,000 Messianic Jews who have the letter T for Torah upon there. We need to see a revival, because the very first engrafting that is about to take place is not an engrafting between the nations and the Messiah, it's between the Jews and the Messiah. And those 144,000, those Messianic Jews, they represent the entire 7.2 million people of the house of Israel. Make yourself a note. There is a first ingathering that is going to take place. There is a first engrafting when God is going to engraft himself to Israel. And when I mean here Israel, I'm talking about the natural branch and also the scattered among our people. But notice something. The ingathering is not complete. The full putting on the garment of the bride is not complete, because then we get to Revelation chapter 7 verse 9, when it says, and then I saw a great multitude, and nobody can count, from every nation, from every tribe, from every tongues. And the fact of the matter that he said that they were in every tongue, telling us that their restoration to the Hebrew language have not taken place yet. Because when Mashiach comes and we've come to the fullness, there's no more Spanish, there's no more German, there's no more Italian. We all are speaking Hebrew. The book of Zephaniah tells us this is yet to occur. It is yet to occur. This is important to understand this, but look what they are doing. They themselves are getting reconciled to the Messiah. The reconciliation to Messiah is not just a reconciliation between the Jews to Yeshua. It's a mistake to think about that. No, it's also a reconciliation of the Gentile to the Messiah, because they will look at the one who they also have pierced and say, what? You're the Messiah? It's not going to be just Jews who are going to be shocked in this day. It's also going to be Gentiles who are going to be shocked in this day. The Messiah is not going to resemble anything anybody thought. The Jews are wrong and the Gentiles are wrong. But the fact of the matter that they are here in Jerusalem make you stop and think, how did they get to Jerusalem? What brought them to Jerusalem? Did they get on El Al 777 airplane? No. The rabbis tell us what is happening here. The rabbis tell us that God stopped the time and he bring all the nations to Jerusalem. But he says something very interesting. He's not just going to bring all the good nations to Jerusalem. He's going to bring all the bad nations also to Jerusalem. There's going to be two different gatherings among the nations. One really, really good and one really, really wicked that is taking place. This is very important to understand. But here in the text, we are reading about those who are being part of the bride from the nation. And the question you need to ask yourself, who is part of the bride? Who represent the bride among the Gentiles? For the Jews, they need on the forehead the letter Torah. They needed to know and expect Yeshua the Messiah, and they needed the letter Torah. I have a news for you, Messianic Jewish brothers. If you reject Torah, you're not going to be part of this 144,000. If you are from the scattered out of Israel and you are rejecting Torah today, guess what? You're not going to be part of this 144,000. But what about the Gentiles? What is the qualification for the Gentiles to be part of this bride? Look what it's saying here in the text. It says, they are dressed, and I like it, white garments. Why are they wearing white garments? What did God say to Moses in Exodus chapter 19:10 before Mount Sinai? He said, wash up your garment for the third day and make sure that they are white as snow. Meaning making sure that you becoming a vessel that can receive and will be able to receive the Messiah. And what does it mean for the Gentile to be white as snow? Well, look what they're doing. They're holding in their hands what it says here in the Hebrew version of Revelation, kapot tmarim. Kapot marim, there's only one interpretation to kapot marim. And this is important because there are so many people who say there is no oral Torah, there is no oral interpretation in the New Covenant. What is kapot marim? Kapot marim is lulav. Lulav is what you are holding in your hands. In Sukkot, why are they holding in the hand lulav? Because the fullness of the Gentile is happening in front of their life. They already have been engrafted. What have been engrafted to? They've been engrafted back through the Torah. You see, the Torah become their engrafting mechanism to return them and to restore them to be able to stand before the Lamb. This is important to understand today. I believe in perfect faith, that the Gentiles have no greater calling in the last days than clothe themselves in the clothes of the Torah. Clothe themselves and prepare to meet the Mashiach. You cannot meet the Mashiach with the wrong garment. And even Yeshua himself said in the parable, in the book of Matthew, that when he come, he look at every person's garment. He look at every clothes, and even if one there. Now you understand why there are people there with the wrong garment. Because the ingathering is an ingathering of the righteous and an ingathering of the wicked. And when he come, he's looking, he said, okay, who has the white garment? Who knows Torah? Who knows what is a lulav? Who is shaking the, oh, you're not shaking the lulav? Oh, that means that you're not ready for the wedding, my friend. And what Yeshua said is going to happen to this person, he's taken outside of the wedding. Beloved, this is not the day. This is not the time. This is not the season to be caught with the wrong garment for this wedding. And here God saying, I am going to make another engrafting. It is an engrafting between me and between the Gentiles. And look what they're going to say. They're going to say, Amen. The blessing and the honor, the wisdom. It's to you, God, forever and ever. Now there's something interesting here. In Revelation chapter 7, then one of the elders stand and they ask one question. This is the question that the Gentiles are going to be asked. Where are those garments from? Listen to this. Where are those garments from? And where they show up from? And listen to the answer in verse 14. I say, Master, you know where they're from. Take a breath now and listen to the word. They are coming from the great trouble and great tribulation, from Jacob's trouble season. Beloved, listen to me. So many people today want to be raptured, but what the text is saying here, that they receive the garments and they wash their garment as a result of Gog and Magog. The reason that they are holding those garments is because they were able to experience Gog and Magog, and they're able to overcome Gog and Magog, and they are becoming the remnant of Gog and Magog. Do you want to be the remnant of the days ahead of us? There are going to be difficult days. There are going to be turbulent days. There are going to be troubling days. Here it's what it says. It says that you will be able to get the garment if you yourself clothe yourself today already in the Torah. If you hold the Torah as your armor, as your shield. I want to talk to you today. If you believe and you walk according to the Torah, believe it today that you have the shield of Ephesians chapter 6. The reason that those Gentiles are handling there, and they said they become white through the blood of the Lamb. They are serving him day and night, day and night. And then something very interesting happened in the end of Revelation chapter 7. It says in verse 17, and Hashem himself will wipe away every tears from their eyes. Beloved, why are the Gentiles crying in this day? The Gentiles are crying because the wedding is starting, and God is looking at the Jews in one side, and he's looking at the Gentiles in the other side, and he opened the door like a giant papa, and he say, all my children, Jew and Gentile, all of you, come to me under a tabernacle, Sukkot Shalom. And the Gentiles look and they said, what? Are we invited? And he said like a laughing dead, all of you are my children, each and every one of you are there. And in this moment, something happening. There is no longer Jew. There is no longer Gentile. There's no longer male. There's no longer female. We are becoming unified. And then we are receiving Jeremiah 31. And then we receive the new covenant. You see, people are mistaken. They think we already received the new covenant. No, we're receiving a drops of the new covenant, not the full thing. The full thing happened only when we reconcile to one another. There are two different reconciliations happening here. Three. The Jews are reconciled to the Messiah. The Gentiles are reconciled to the Messiah. And ultimately, it is the Jews and the Gentiles who are reconciled to one another. Beloved, today we are standing in a day of unification. Did you notice that when Israel received a Torah, they received a Jew and Gentile together? There were some who would join us and say, you know what? We are grafting ourselves. We are grafting in. We are leaving Egypt behind. And we are going to be part of this bride. And in a few moments, you're going to hear the word of the Torah. And you will cry, Nasav and Ishma. You will say those words together with us. I challenge you today. And I ask you to question. If you're Jewish and you're watching this book, do you have the Taf? Do you have the Taf written on your forehead? But if you're a Gentile today, I'm also going to ask you, do you know how to shake the lulav today? Are you sure you're going to overcome Gog and Magog? And don't tell me that the Gentiles will be raptured when it's clearly said here that they went through the great trouble of Gog and Magog. The text is telling us this. They are washing their garments. What does the washing represent? It's a tshuva, it's a process. You're doing your laundry day in and day out. Here the book of Revelation gives us an angle toward both the Jew and the Gentile in the day of the ingathering. But now, friends, I want you to listen for the same event as accounted to us by the prophet Isaiah inside the scroll. Let us go there together. Look with me together, brothers and sisters. We are in Isaiah chapter 25, and I want to read it to you. Start in verse 6, depending on what version you are. It is the same account of Revelation. And it says, Vaya Adonai Tsevaot לכל העמים בהר הזה משתה שמנים, משתה שומרים שמנים, ממחים שמרים, מזקקים, ובלה בהר הזה Pnealot. Let me stop there. And in this mountain shall the Lord of hosts will make all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things, full of marrow, of wines on the lees, well refined. Let me stop and explain to you, friends. I want you to see this word, the word here, the word mishteh. In Matthew chapter 25, Yeshua says that the kingdom of God, coming of the kingdom, is like a banquet. Now, what are they drinking in this banquet? Okay, it's the Feast of Shmanim. It's a Feast of Shmanim. Brothers and sisters, let me explain to you this word, the word Shmanim in the text. This word, Shmanim, comes from the word shaman. Shaman means in Hebrew, fat. But do you know that the word Shmanim is represented by the word Shmoneh? It's represented by the word Shmoneh. Why it's represented by the word Shmoneh? The word Shmoneh is the name 8. How many names that the Messiah hold? Ki yeled yulad lanu, ben nitan lanu v'yikare shemo, Pele Yoetz, El Gibor, Avi, Ad, Tzar Shalom. 8 names, and it's called the festival of the 8. But the word 8 also means shemen, oil, anointing. When one becoming the Mashiach, what have to take place in order for one to become Mashiach? You have to be anointed with oil. This day that you read about in Revelation chapter 7 is not other than the Brit Milah, the baby naming ceremony of Yeshua HaMashiach. Everybody are recognizing him. The community of the Jews and the community of the Gentiles all are recognizing him at the same time. We recognize him and we name him and we call upon his name. In this day, beloved, I want you to hear what I'm telling you. The day of Revelation chapter 7 verse 9 is the same day of Isaiah chapter 25 verse 6, because it's the day that God himself anoints the name of the Messiah. Through our own recognition, we are recognized who he is. When the bride recognizes who is the groom, the wedding can start. Unless the bride can recognize who is the groom, how can the wedding take place? Let's continue together with the text and let's read. This is important. והמסכה הנסוכה על כל הגויים בלה המוות לנצח, ומחה אדוני השם דמעה מעל כל פנים, וחרפת עמו יסיר מעל כל הארץ, כי אדוני diber. Listen to this. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all the nation. The picture is starting to become very clear to us. You remember in Revelation chapter 7 when we read that the Gentiles are crying and the Gentiles are weeping? The Hebrew word here is the word masecha. It's an allusion to the festival of Purim. There's a picture here of Purim. When Purim, not everything what it's appeared, it's what it is, right? Everything is in disguise. Everything is not exactly what it's appeared to. And here God saying, I am removing the veil. I am removing the mask from the Gentile. Part of this unification that is taking place between the Jew and the Gentile have to deal with what the Gentile have to be getting rid of. They have a baggage of 2,000 years of Christianity. And here you are seeing this baggage literally falling off. And who is the one who is falling off? God is the one who's taking it off, and he's taking it off. Listen to me, he's taking it off Because he wants to unify themselves. He wants to unify themselves to the house of Israel. And I want you to hear the conclusion of this passage with me one more time. ומחה אדוני, השם אדוני, דמעה מעל כל פנים, וחרפת עמו יסיר מעל כל הארץ, כי אדוני דבר, או דיבר, דיבר. He will wipe the tear from their face, and the shame of his people he will remove from the entire land. Which tears is he wiping? Beloved, the words of Revelation chapter 7 and Isaiah chapter 25 are in perfect harmony. He's wiping away the tears. But do you notice what he called the Gentiles? Do you notice what he called the Gentiles? In Isaiah 25, he used the term Amo, his people. This is the remnant. This is the remnant of the people who now have a new name. Have you ever wondering why in Jeremiah 31, which is the very next thing that is happening logistically in the story? It's called the new covenant, a covenant in the house of Yehudah and the house of Israel, and he's not making distinction in the covenant. Do you wonder why? Because the moment he removed the veil from the Gentile, they are no longer Gentiles. No longer Gentile. They're becoming part of the house of Israel. They have a new name, and their new name is Israel. They're starting Revelation 7:9 as Gentile, and by the time we wipe the tears of the eye, they are no longer Gentile. Now they are becoming part of the house of Israel, who is ready to receive the new covenant. And here he used this word cherpa, the same word that we see in the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, to represent the shame that is lifted upon the nation. You see, what is the shame? Just as it says in Ephesians chapter 2, you have been foreigner from the covenants, strangers. But at this moment, in what we call Yom HaAchdut, the day of unification, they are not just reconciled to Hashem, the Father. They also reconcile to the brother. And just in the story of the prodigal son, this is the day that the banquet begin, and he write upon our hearts the new Torah. Today, friends, as we are entering now with Chazan Gordon into this prophetic moment, you have a chance to start the washing of the garment and say to God, remove the old veil. He says he will remove it, and I believe. Some of you say, I am a Catholic, I am Hindu, I am a Buddhist, I am a Muslim, whatever. He wants to remove it this evening. He wants to remove it from you today. So as you hear the prayers, as you open the night of the bride, the publication, I want to pray for you today that the veil will be removed. And it is okay to cry. It is okay to cry, because guess what? He is taking you in. He's starting prophetically today already to take people in. You are not strangers, you are not orphans, you are not without inheritance, you are not without legacy if you are coming in. But in order to do that, you do need a new garment. You do need the garment of the house of Israel. You need to stand with the house of Israel for this. The Israel also, when I mean Israel, I mean the Jewish people. We need the Torah. We need to give the Torah to the Gentiles so that they will receive the new garment. Do you see, beloved, how much the Gentiles need their Jewish brothers in preparation for the Yom HaAchdut? And today we're standing in Shavuot, and we say those words, Imcha kol dim'a mi'einayim. Lord, in the name of Yeshua, you erase pagan legacies, pagan past, witchcraft, You are raised from our ancestry. Maybe it's been passed to us: anti-Semitism, anti-Judaism, anti-Messiah, anti-Torah, anti-God. You are erasing it right now. Stand up right this moment as we walk into the night of the bride and proclaim the day of Achdut, the day of unity, where I am reconciled by the power of God. To enter into the banquet is today. And I'm entering in with the right garments and the right clothes. And over the next 2 hours, as we call upon God and will receive this night of unification, Jew and Gentile together, cry out. Say, I want these new garments. I want these new clothes. God, clothe me today, so that when we come to the wedding and we inspect the clothes, my clothes will be unified in Achdut, the heart of Israel. Thank you, Lord, that the day has come for that. Now we are entering without any delay straight to the night of the bride. God bless you, Laila Tov. Hashem is